Hello, welcome to yet another session of our Vedic Maths Live. Today we will be seeing how to find out square root of numbers in few seconds. Now, we all know that when you have a number 2 and you multiply it by itself, you get the square of 2, which can also be represented as 2 square. So we can say, which is 4. So we can say that 4 is the square of 2 and 2 is the square root of 4. So we can represent the square root symbol like this. Today we will be looking at how to find the square root of big numbers. So before that, we should know the squares of numbers between 1 to 10. Square of 1 is 1. Square of 2 is 4. Square of 3 is 9. Square of 4 is 16. Square of 5 is 25. Square of 6 is 36. Square of 7 is 49. Square of 8 is 64. Square of 9 is 81. And square of 10 is 100. So from this we can see that if the square of a number ends with 1, the square root ends with 1 or 9. If the square of the number ends with 4, square root ends with 2 or 8. If the square of the number ends with 9, square root ends with 3 or 7. If the square of the number ends with 6, the square root ends with 4 or 6. If the square of the number ends with 5, the square root ends with 5. And if the square of the number ends with 0, square root ends with 0. An interesting point to note is that these two numbers add up to 10. 1 plus 9 is 10, 2 plus 8 is 10, 3 plus 7 is 10, 4 plus 6 is 10. We can also have a look at numbers from 10 to 100 square. That is 10 square is 100, 20 square is 400, 30 square is 900, 40 square is 1600, 50 square is 2500, 60 square is 3600, 70 square is 4900, 80 square is 6400, 90 square is 8100, and 100 square is 10,000. These are just for our reference. You don't have to memorize them. If we have to find the square root of a number 3721, how will we do that? Now, since the number ends with 1, the square root will end with 1 or 9. We also know that 60 square is 3600 and 70 square is 4900. So since 3721 lies between 3600 and 4900, we can say that the square root lies between 60 and 70. So it can be 61, 62 to 69. It cannot be 60 or 70 because 60 square is 3600 and 70 square is 4900. We have also seen that the square root will end with 1 or 9 since the square ends with 1. So the square root will either be 61 or 69. Since 3721 lies closer to 3600 and not to 4900, its square root will be 61. If it was closer to 4900, the square root would have been 69. Let's take another example. Nine eight 0, 1. We know that 90 square is 8100 and 100 square is 10,000. And 9801 lies between 8100 and 10,000. So it will be 91. So the square root will lie between 91 and 100. 91, 92, 93 up to 99. Now since it ends with 1, it can either be 91 or 99. Now since 9801 lies closer to 10,000, its square root is 99. You can also cross check. So you get 9801. On cross checking, you will get 980. Let's take another example. Let's find the square root of 3364. So the square, we know that the square of 50 is 2500 and the square of 60 is 3600. So it will lie between 50 and 60. So 51, 52 up to 59. It could be any of these. And since the number ends with 4, the square root will end with 2 or 8. So the square root will either be 52 or 58. Now since 3364 is closer to 60, the square root is 58. You can cross-check all these answers. So you have seen yet another trick, and a very easy trick to find square root of even 4-digit numbers without using a calculator or without doing prime factorization. This method is only suitable for perfect squares and not for numbers which are not perfect squares. So we'll see you tomorrow in yet another episode of our Vedic Maths Live. Thank you and good night.